Hello, my name is Hunter Bagley. I'm here to talk with you today about how to make Damascus steel. So, the way that I like to do it when you start out, you're supposed to use two different types of steel. I use a 15N20, which is a high nickel, and it gives a light silver color to the steel, and also a 1080, which is a high carbon and gives a dark color and a strength to the steel. When you start out, you will take however many layers you want. I generally start with about 12. And you can take those and take a 15N20 and a 1080 and layer them all the way up. You'll press them together. You take a welder and spot weld them together, and then you'll take the billet and stick it into the forge after you take a piece of rebar or any other sort of metal to attach to the end of the billet to use as a form of a handle to be able to accurately hammer it all together flush. You'll put it up to temperature. You know that the metal is at temperature when it reaches, a lot of people call it a wheat color. It's like a really bright, soft yellow. You put it in there. When you know it's at that temperature, you can pull it out, put it on your anvil, start hammering it. Some people prefer to use a power hammer. I always do everything by hand with a hammer and anvil. You can pour a borax over it, which is actually just a flux powder. A lot of people just use just a regular laundry detergent borax powder to pour on top of it. It helps all the metal stick together really well and make a really nice flush forge weld. Hammer it all out in one single billet. You'll lengthen it out depending on the size of the knife. You'll want the original billet to be about 12 to 14 inches long. You'll take that and hammer it out to that length, and then let it cool down and air dry to a light orange, and then you'll dunk it into a tank of water. You'll pull that out and you'll take an angle grinder and you'll cut it directly in half, not quite all the way through, but just enough where you can take it and bend it over. You'll spot weld it a second time and repeat the process over and over. So you start out with 12 layers of steel, 12 then turns into 24, 24 into 48, and so on. It's recommended that you go up to about 180 layers of steel. After that, you will have a billet that forms, and if you can see the pattern in here, you can see that this is a light W pattern Damascus steel, and this is what your billet turns out like. After you get your billet shaped, you can reheat it back up to that wheat yellow color, and you'll take it and you will rough out the shape of a knife. You always want to start with the blade end of your knife, and you'll come out to the blade, and then there is a dip into the blade called a ricasso, and then after the ricasso is formed, you'll go into the choll of the blade, which is the flat part here, and then after the choll, you'll go into the tang, which is what fits into the handle. Now this is a refined form of a knife. This is what happens after you go in and you grind on it and stuff. But when you start out and you just get that rough shape out, it's all going to be flat on either side. You want to take an angle grinder with a rough bit on there, and you're just going to want to run over it really quick just so you can see remove all the rust and the gunk and everything off of it, and all the flakiness off of it. You can see the steel. That's when you'll take it to your grinders and you can start grinding in. This is actually what's called a hollow ground knife, which is where the wheel is not flat but it's rounded, and it's a lot harder to do. It's something that's recommended for people that's been doing knives for a couple of years. But this is what a knife looks like after you get rough ground into it, and it's got the full the blade, the ricasso, the choll, and the tang. And then after you do that, you will go through, refine with finer grit sandpaper all the way up to about 4,000 grit, and you'll come up and make the blade nice and smooth, and you will want to dip it into a fluoric acid mixed with water. Leave it in there for about 20 to 30 minutes, and that is what etches the Damascus into the blade and gives it all of the patterns and the swirls and colors and stuff. And then you will go in and choose whatever kind of handle you have. This one is a Samber Stag imported from England with a nickel silver finger guard, and the sheath is made out of shark skin. This is one that I made with the guy that taught me how to make knives. You'll take that and dip the blade into the acid. It'll etch it, and then you can go in and put the finger guard on. After that, you fit the finger guard on there with a two-part epoxy. Fill the handle with a two-part epoxy after drilling it out, and set the handle on there, and you'll have to kind of temper with it a little bit to get it to set good and square. Leave it in there for about an hour to an hour and a half. It sets good, and you can go through and you can finish grind, and you can go through and just do your touch-up stuff. And then after that, it takes about an hour to an hour and a half to make a sheath, and you have yourself a knife. That's basically the quick and easy version of how to make a Damascus steel knife.